this way from Horse.
Yeah.
I know,
Across
it's-
the road.
Slices them sideways back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real, it's a log, it's a, one of these back there.
Anyway, just thought I'd mention it as a potential problem for, that'll get worse.
We can take a look at it. We
Sure.
can-
You and I can take a ride over.
Yeah,
there.
we'll take a ride over and we can make it part of the discussion on the 13th as we look at utilization of funds. I'll be talking with the road commission.
I mean, there's, even driving around town right here now, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a couple that I think I just about lost my truck in. There's two that I know
There's
that,
two real bad ones.
yeah, there's,
Ray's gone at the road commission, but I have talked with his successor on a couple of occasions, and it is pothole season, so
no,
The street's bad.
if you would kindly remind me, I'll make inquiries about setting up a meeting as early as tomorrow.
I don't think they can start till May though.
Well, I know they
or-
can't
I know it's
start,
like
but we
a
can at least put them on
we
alert.
could
Yeah,
get,
yeah.
we can get first
Get
on
a
the list
list.
maybe.
Yeah.
Dibs.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Horst.
you very much. Anyone else that would like to offer public comment at this time before we get into the agenda for tonight's special meeting? Hearing none, there will be a second opportunity at the end of the agenda for public comment. Please note the time in school that we closed. Next item on our agenda is approval of the 21-22 or current fiscal year amended budgets for the various departments. These will be roll call votes. We would ask that
These are these ones that were handed out
the
today, right?
treasurer has, will provide information as soon as I
Okay.
stop talking about each of the amended budgets. Crystal, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so, let me think what all, yeah, the budgets are amended as much as they can be, through right now, like both water, like for example, the Osceola water, we're showing, net income of negative 23,000, but we've got one more billing cycle that's gonna be added, after next week, so, even despite that extra 16,000, it looks like we may not even end up needing it, we're gonna come out kinda even there. So that, those two still have to be updated, as far as that's concerned. The road fund, while it shows, also a negative net income, I had talked to Christina, our auditor, about this earlier today, she said, when we have a fund balance that we can use, that, because there's no line item for that, it just shows as a negative on the net income. The amounts that are on the road fund, the 2953 and the 28,000, those were amounts that were collected this year, not the total. Cause we don't have any way of carrying those balances forward, so even though it's showing a negative, it's not truly negative, it's just, for this year, it shows like it is.
This is why I struggle so much with this budget system.
I
Don't
know.
know how much you actually have.
We're working on a solution.
Well, I
I'd
know
say
you
that
are.
sort of dominated the last couple of days in preparation, is
Mhm.
moving us on, so.
I think you guys are doing great, we just keep plugging away.
It's the
Tracy and
system.
Krista have done
It's
a
the
heck of a
system.
lot of
It
work.
is.
It is,
It's
a,
QuickBooks,
yeah, it's the
for
way
sure.
they do things.
It's a lot easier to look at than it was a few years ago.
I agree.
Well, and I mean, you know, she just flat out said we don't have any way of being able to reflect our fund balance in here.
That's
It doesn't
horrible.
exist.
That's
So,
horrible.
right? So,
That's a horrible way to do, if I wanna know how much is in my checking account, you open it up and look at your register, you know, I mean, I don't understand how they can make a system that we can't tell how much we got.
Right.
And I'll never, I've been here, what, 12 years? I'll never understand this. I'll never buy it. Never.
May I suggest that we go through these in order, starting with,
Huh?
Krista, I'll defer to you for comment if need be, but if we
Sure.
look at the,
I got 12.
gentlemen, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Osceola Township General Profit and Loss, this would be the first page that's put together. You see the budget at 288.4, 288.4 for expenses. Need a motion and support to approve this is the final amended budget.
A
for this fiscal
motion.
year. Ms. School, is there support?
Yeah.
Mr. Jenke, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. School, roll call please.
Ms. Carter,
yes.
Mr. Jenke,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes. Motion carries. The next one in your packet is the Osceola Township water. Please note the difference from what we've been working on. Step back down to 215.8. That was a result of Krista's deliberations with Christina, I believe, and the need to pull that carry forward because it may not be necessary in part out of the proposed budget, so that's why she mentioned it earlier. So the budget would be as originally presented prior to that carry forward revenue being added.
So this number that right here, this 231.8, we're gonna knock that back down to 215.
231.8 is knocked back down, so this is, right now, we're just working on amended budgets, and we'll
Yeah, that's
knock
the
it
new
down
budget.
next
Are we
year.
gonna do that on the other one too,
Yeah.
though, or no?
I don't know.
Well, we'll-
I
That
had,
was just what I
Yeah,
heard.
no, well,
okay,
what we're doing is we're knocking it down for the amendment for the current year.
Oh, okay,
And we're
alright,
Carrying
okay.
forward, and we'll knock it down for the start of next year with
Okay.
the new budget, because we're uncertain as to whether or not we're gonna need it.
Okay.
So with Krista's explanation, do I have a motion to approve the Osceola Township Water Fund, budget, final amendment at 215.8 and 215.8 for the fiscal year?
Moved.
Mr. Wareham, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Jenke? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Hool, please, roll call.
Mr. Jenke, I mean, Ms. Gardner.
yeah, yes.
Mr. Jenke,
Yes.
Mr. Wareham,
Yes.
Mr. Hookola.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next one you have is Tamarack City. Tamarack City, 122,660, and again, 122,660, this differs slightly. We had a $130 issue this, it's been corrected, and it reflects both on the expenditure side and on the budget side. I recall that had $130 added, I believe, to audit expenses. It is not reflected in here because these are not fully updated figures, but the dollar amounts are what we're dealing with. Does everybody understand that? We've got most of the amendment in here. But we balanced out the two figures at 122,660. Putting that money back in. I don't recall exactly where it went. We added a line item yesterday to get that up. Questions? Do I have a motion to approve the final amended budget for Tamarack City Water at 122,660 for income and 122,660 for expenses? Ms. Hool, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Jenke? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying, oh, excuse me, roll call, Ms. Hool.
Ms. Gardner. Yes. Mr. Jenke,
Yes.
Mr. Wareham,
Yes.
Mr. Hookola.
Yes.
Yes.
The last one is the road fund. Krista, did you want to restate why the figures are different in what we are approving? Can I refresh our memory?
The budgeted amounts were including the previous balances, so the budgeted amounts look so much higher than the actual income because of that. And then the difference between the total income and the total expenses is just because, you know, the payments we made would have come out of those actual balanced amounts, not just what we collected this year.
May I offer, are we just then endorsing the amount collected in the current fiscal year as the working figures? That would be the 29,586, the 53,334, and the 28,8.
Roughly, I mean, I, that's what we updated at the outset of the meeting.
During the public hearing, we updated,
Yeah, the 29,660.
29,660.
Yeah, those
Okay.
are the numbers.
Those are the numbers. I apologize, I
That's
stand
okay.
corrected. This is a little trickier because of the carry forward being included
Right.
in some of these figures.
Right.
So the numbers we're looking at are consistent with the public hearing adjustment made of 29,660 for District 1. Is that the amended figure we're looking for? Or are
Um,
we, that's for next year?
that's for next year.
Okay,
I mean, I
then
updated it to
then
reflect
it is
that.
budget as presented for the current fiscal year, 149,315.95 and 140,190 were the figures that we used for this fiscal year.
Mhm,
Okay, that's what we're, okay. 385,103 is the total.
mhm.
Stand corrected? Does everybody understand that?
Kind of.
Yeah, what we're dealing with is an amended budget that actually
know,
is
it's
affirming the
stupid.
amount that included carry forward
We said
last year and gave us a total of 385,130 across the three precincts, excluding the, road fund, and the old road fund. And then, we've drawn down a lot of that revenue, but it is the figure we started with at the beginning of the year to make our disbursements last year for summer repairs.
Mhm.
So that's what we're reaffirming, is that those numbers are the final amended budget for the current year. I'm asking the question.
Say it
Where
again?
it says budget
Yeah,
on the page that we have in the attachment.
correct, yeah.
I mean, I guess
That-
the craziest part about this is that is that truly income, even though it's on the budget side, if we already have the money? Is that really, 'cause I guess that's,
It's almost like it's carryover, not income.
yeah, I don't know, you get what
No,
I'm saying?
the-
It's not really income if it's,
The numbers under, on the far left, under April 1, 21 to March
Okay.
29, 22.
Yep.
That's what we took in
That's
this
the
year.
actual income.
That's actually what I collected on taxes and we deposited in the account.
Okay.
The
So then-
numbers under budget, we budgeted it incorrectly previously. We should have done it more in line with what we're, proposing, what we changed at the beginning today.
okay.
So this is not how we should have done it last year.
I mean,
I got clarification on
So
that.
are we supposed to be, should we be making this budget match what's right for the
That's-
final budget?
That's the $64 question, is
Because I
remember,
feel like,
Go ahead.
before you go any further, I feel like even when you look at these other ones, I remember when we go in for the last budget,
Yep.
I felt like the budget numbers had to equal the actual numbers for when we went to the audit. You get where I'm going with that? I
Like the
don't,
400 up there had to be 400 down here.
kind of, yeah, exactly.
It's the way it used to be.
And then we used to have to deal with that, because then you had to put a line item down here that said, well, there was money that went into a special line item that was unspent money, or it went somewhere else. You get what I'm saying? So that
Just so they know.
our actual numbers had to equal actual,
Yeah.
there had to be a thing here, so that the budget numbers, in the end, for the very last budget, I think
Had to equal.
had to equal. So
had they
I
equal-
could be wrong on this, and you guys are probably gonna find out when you go when we go to audit.
No, you could be right.
But I feel like in the past I'd have to go look at some past
don't think
March
I have-
budgets or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Part of the dilemma is that we allocated resources, and that's all I was gonna interject. During the current fiscal year, that it covered all of the repair work that we did last spring, summer, and early fall. And those numbers reflected carry forward money from the previous fiscal year plus what we collected. That's why it got up to 385. And that was the basis of that rather.
I understand that
Yeah.
part of it.
That was our budget at the start of the year. Whether it was an accurate or appropriate budget is the question that we're asking right now.
Yeah.
Is did we add revenue that was truly carry forward but needed to be accounted for separately or distinctly? But we had blended it as a combined resource for utilization last year, which made that the budget.
Yeah.
I-
Well, now he's talking about previous practice, and he kind of went back to the general fund, but.
I did, but I mean,
Yeah.
Like
it
where
kinda
the-
looks here too,
The
but
total income came in at $400,096.12, but the expenses only came in at $189,164, and what he's saying is that previously, we would have to make the expenses equal the income
Just
in
like-
order to say this was a complete budget.
Just like
for the year.
Tamarack's budget, when they sent it to you, a dollar-based budget, if you notice it, their income, it's their expenses, and they're exactly the same number.
Mhm.
And that's the way this used to be.
Was it like that for actual expenses? though?
Yeah, because I
that's what
thought
can't
it
remember.
it went to actual, because the
I thought
last
it was an
one
audit thing we had to do.
basically was not really a budget anymore, it was,
Yeah,
this is what happened.
yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
it was,
because I don't think we
And I-
did that last year, and I
and
don't
I-
remember
thought
her
she said
saying
they
anything
didn't
What
about
have
happens
that.
if we
I remember having
table
to,
this until our April meeting?
well, I don't,
I don't know
I
that
feel
it-
like we could go forward with this if we have to, but if we have to, do something with it, I guess we can later, but I just wanna make sure that you guys understand, I'm okay with doing it this way, if this is the way you think we'll go through the audit, but
Mhm.
I'm just, making sure that we, from the trustee that's been around, it doesn't quite seem, it seems like there's,
You're talking about road fund here.
no,
No, all of them.
I'm talking about all the whole packet.
We did it, I mean, this is my, like,
I mean, obviously, road
eighth
fund,
time doing this, and I don't remember ever them not matching.
yeah, that's where I'm,
Well,
if
I
you-
didn't match the last 2 years.
I
And
thought
then
she
what
said
happened?
they
This will be the
didn't
third
have
year.
to,
okay, that's fine.
Well, that's what I thought Debbie told us.
right?
Yeah,
Okay, so maybe we were, in the past, we were doing it wrong,
we
and,
might have been.
Yeah.
and this is just,
Mhm.
it's just,
As long
it's
as-
just a whole new road.
As long as this and this match,
Yeah.
We're
That's all
good.
that matters.
And
'Cause we
as
used to
long as
always
this
have to s-
number is bigger than this number,
Well, that's
then we're
important too.
good.
Yeah, but we used to always have to slide a line item in down here,
Remember, we're
that
not
would
looking
took
at
up-
expenditures.
no, but I am talking about them.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, but what we're affirming today are the budgets to close out the year.
And that's
that
what
are
I'm talking
That's what he's
about.
talking about.
100% what I'm talking
He's
about.
talking about, and in past practice, the total income line and the total expense line matched just like they do under the budget.
Because you're closing the budget. You're not, there's no more
Miscellaneous.
95% on the side over here. It was all 100, 100, 100, 100.
Yeah, I thought, yeah,
And-
said that wasn't,
That's what we used to
Well,
see.
the-
But if we're not doing that anymore and it still goes through the audit, I'm fine. I just,
we didn't do that last year and there was no issues in the
Mm-mm.
audit.
okay,
Not
okay,
this-
all right. I'm just gonna,
Yeah,
I'm
this
just
is,
gonna say that it's different.
well, this is really perplexing because this is the way we've done it for the last few years. Is following the direction that we've received.
Yeah.
And making sure that the budget's lined up, the revenues
I
and
think I did say
expenses.
something about it last year, and
We're a
maybe
whole
you guys
different
looked
world.
into it, and I don't know for sure, so,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
But a lot of
I'm
this,
willing to just go forward with it and,
a lot of this has changed too, because remember, we used to go through every budget and bring all the numbers to this budget, and then them come out to match. And we're not
Right.
bringing all those budgets to this budget anymore.
no, but we did used to go in here and say, like, for instance, what we did for the next budget, you'd look at this one, you'd say, okay, 4,000 something 100%. Well,
Well,
obviously that budget line item might be something wrong,
That has
or
the
there is an
COVID
extenuating circumstance to it.
and there is.
Yeah, so we would go down the lines and look like that and say, okay, this is still a good number, this is still a good number, we think we can still do this.
Mhm.
Oh, boy, it's an election year, this number is gonna have to go up. No, it's not an election year, let's move this money over
Something else.
to a park or something like that, that's what we used to do. So there was operating expenses for non-election years versus election years that were, somewhat different. But then I remember taking all these things to like 100% because you basically said, well, it's not a budget anymore for the last one. It just is now, that's the number. It's not changing it again, you're not fudging it, there's no more, I think we're gonna spend about this much. No, that's 100%, it's done.
Yeah.
Talking about going past that figure is what you're doing. We can't go past the figure once affirmed, is what you're driving at.
No, that's not exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what he's driving at.
Well,
I
I'm
can't-
not,
I can't quite explain it.
I'm losing it because, the conversation only because what we're affirming are just the budgets.
No, not for this one though.
Well,
For
yes,
this one,
We're
but-
trying to close out.
We're trying to close a
but
budget.
we're closing in a vacuum. We
Well-
got $400,000 in revenue identified, for example, on Osceola Township's budget.
Mhm.
So now,
Received. That, not all of that is revenue that goes into the budget that was prepared. There's
Right.
money in there that's being held in there.
correct, and then we used to have to stick a line item in there that it would match at the end. And it would be something at the bottom and we put it in a line item and then that money that would just end up in the checking account and be carried over.
And
So the
that's-
top equaled the bottom.
Right. I
okay.
can double check, but like
Okay.
when we met with Debbie cause we were concerned about that, and she was like, why are you trying to get it to match, that is not what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So I don't think we
And
were doing
that's
it
just
right.
it.
Okay, that's all I wanna know.
Yeah,
The-
but I'll double check to make sure,
I'm
It's a lot easier if you
positive
don't have
that's
to.
what she said, though this doesn't matter,
yeah,
this does.
this matters, that these match at the outset, and it matters that this is bigger than this, but
Mhm.
I don't believe these have to match.
Well,
Well, we are through the first.
And we
three
wanna
now.
make sure that all these numbers are, well, not these numbers are less than 100%. Because then
At
that
or
means we
under.
didn't, yeah, at or under, because then we didn't overspend in that category.
And that's
The
where we
state doesn't
move
like
money
that
around.
either,
But
right.
revenue is the variable, to go to your point.
revenue is the variable, and also expenditures based on certain years
Mhm,
vary. There
mhm.
are different expenditures, like a presidential election year is gonna have,
Right.
there's gonna be more revenue for that because you get some money for doing some of these things from, you know, like if you know, like the school is gonna be a part of that election, and they have an election that they're piling on or something, and then you have a lot more expenditures, cause you have all that, you know, you have all the things that go with doing an election, for
Mhm.
instance, so. I'm just saying that those things were usually the variables we looked at, and that's fine, we looked at some stuff yesterday, but this is more along the lines of what I was, seeing before, so, I guess, we really, I'm fine with going forward with, this is what you remember now, I just was putting up a little bit of a flag, that's all, just to make sure
Well, I'm not
somebody.
sure that the flag isn't appropriate, and we've gotta look into this.
I'm not
and
sure
get
it is
answers.
appropriate, but there's only.
It may not be, but it also might be, so let's look at it from both perspectives. What we're trying to do is affirm the budgets that become the template then as fixed figures as we start next year. But they're going to be, we're gonna be amending next year's budgets as early as April 13th.
And then at the end here, so going back to the one we're working on,
We're working on the road.
you know,
Yep.
typically, your budget would have never been way different than what your actual numbers
Right.
were. is
Well,
what
that,
we're at.
that particular one was budgeted incorrectly,
Okay,
because it was using the total balance rather than only what we collected that year. So it was wrong, I mean, we shouldn't have done it that way.
I know that's a tough one, because if we were to do what we're saying here, you have an income right now that's way less than the expenditures. So if you're saying what we were saying before, we have to have a good understanding of why that number is. Like this one, you were saying this has gotta be higher than this, well, obviously that is not the case here, but
Right.
we know why that is, and we know what
Right.
money we had. And
Yep, and I specifically called her today about that budget, and she said that if you have a fund balance, you can have a negative,
the negative down here.
yes, because there is no line item to bring that fund
Right, because
balance
it's not
carried
truly
forward.
income. You
Right.
already claimed that income somewhere
Right,
else.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
that income in some other past year is positive,
mhm,
and now here we are,
Looking at a
Negative.
negative.
yeah,
Right.
and which is fine, as long as we could somehow keep track of it, but it's tough.
I'm not
It hap-
suggesting that this is gonna help, but at last year's meeting, the figures for the road fund are identical to what appears on the budget line. And we approved them last year at those levels, knowing that they included carry forward revenue in the previous year.
Well,
well, I don't think we,
you,
to
usually
be
you
fair,
guys,
I don't think we knew that last
Well-
year, at least I didn't, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of this stuff through different eyes as we're going forward and realizing what we have been
usually,
doing wrong.
when something comes up, you usually find out in the audit, that's usually where,
Mhm.
you guys are trying to be proactive and ask before we get there, and that's great, but a lot of times what happens is, we can't do that again next year, we gotta fix this, don't do that
And every
again.
year, it's getting less and less.
Well, we're learning, there are more
Right.
things that we're trying to correct,
Yeah.
to go to your point.
Okay,
What's
So-
your pleasure on the road fund budget?
I mean, knowing what we know, I'm move to approve, but I don't know.
Mr. Jenke moves to approve as presented.
I'll support.
And there's support from Ms. Wu. There's been a very necessary and important discussion on the budget and the budgets generally. Is there any additional discussion on the motion to
Oh,
approve?
well, it's not specifically to the motion, but I was just gonna say that even though, and I don't quite understand either, but even though we're approving this tonight, we still have expenditures that are gonna come out of here. You know what I mean? Like if we have like those last, like through the month of April, we could have things that still have to be assigned to this budget.
Because they were.
Like a power bill for this month, you know?
Like if there's a
depending on-
power bill that's dated this month, it would still have to come out.
Yeah,
I mean, the interesting part about this is you were talking about the water bills, and I don't know if we ever used to split those.
We have to be careful, we have a motion and support on the floor, so do we
Oh.
wanna pick up the dialogue on this immediately after we vote?
Yeah.
To continue the discussion generally about budgets before we proceed with approval of next year's?
Mhm.
I mean, so,
I'm fine with your explanation and what you just said there, for the respective to the budget purposes.
anything else on the road fund budget? We have a motion before us?
Ms. Gardner,
yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Waring. Mr. Hupple.
Yes. Oh, picking up on that theme, next item on the agenda are the budgets for the coming year. Before we get into that discussion, why don't we take a moment and pick up the theme brought up just a moment ago during the discussion on the water company. Mr. Jenke, did you wanna continue?
You know, I think I got my point across on what we were trying to deal with here, and I think I'm fine with moving forward with it, cause if it's working, there's no reason to make a mess out of something that I you know, if this is how it's supposed to be done, I don't know why I wouldn't have picked up on this last year, I'm not sure why I wouldn't have, but,
I think we were building off the same foundation from the previous year. And the idea that we were trying to match up revenue streams, but you made a point early on in the discussion about not knowing what fund balances are. And I think that's critical here, because in the road fund, we're rolling that revenue forward to utilize in the fiscal year, which is the construction season. And then we collect in the winter tax, the road fund millage. And it gets assigned in the January through March timeframe. So we end up with this pot of money coming in during a fiscal year where we've
not only
expended.
that, but we also have, sometimes we have, leverages against some of that money that's already, may not be spent, but it's already leveraged against something
It's
out
committed.
there,
Yep.
it's committed.
Well,
yeah.
like you mentioned about the 4,000% on the, whatever
Correct.
that line item was, that's the half of the COVID relief money that we got.
That's what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I mean, that's gonna be utilized, but we won't even see that, cause it's not gonna
It's not
happen
gonna be
until
on our other next
a couple
budget.
years, right?
And it's
You know,
not
so
on
it's
this
gonna-
budget as far as.
it's gonna be
finalizing
No, but
the-
it's a revenue
Correct.
stream that's identified.
It's a fund balance out there that's sitting out there now,
Mhm.
Right, but that's next year's problem.
and it probably actually has, it
All the
probably
way to
actually,
26,
Oh,
we
right.
have till 26 to
So
spend it, so
in trying to
whatever,
finalize this one.
Yeah.
Which is the main purpose.
Yeah.
That's insignificant right now.
yeah, it is.
Right.
Okay.
But what we should do is figure out a way to track it.
I do wanna say,
Please, we're not signing a general discussion right now before we move into this year's budget.
yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, one part about that money that you were just talking about, my, thoughts on utilizing it are based on using it for identified projects already in the township scope of work. I'm not talking about coming up with some hidden pet project. Just gonna put that out there right now. We have several locations that, identify projects within the township, including our thing that,
5-year rec plan?
yes, the rec plan puts forth, and that's where I'm talking about utilizing money that we haven't been able to. So I'm just gonna say that right now.
You're in
Because-
favor of looking at one-time use, to use your
Yes.
term from previous meeting.
One-time use that doesn't necessarily have revenue in it. I'm looking specifically at our rec plan, which already has gone through approval process.
Any other general comments before we begin discussing the amounts identified for budgets for various entities going forward? We have General Township with operating mills identified, the water company budgets, with the road fund budgets again. We have Mason wastewater, and we have the fire departments. Each of these will require,
Wait, no.
I'm just identifying what the budgets are that
Oh.
are identified on the worksheet for the special
Are
meeting.
you,
with the
you're talking
line
about the ones that are right here, right?
Yep, I'm
The
looking.
line items underneath.
It says FY
Yeah.
22-23 budgets, and it's in 5 different categories: general, water company, road fund, mason, and fire departments.
I mean, I'm fine with making a motion to approve all the listed budgets, as amended, cause we're gonna do this one at 215 right now, or are we gonna still leave it at 231?
That's,
Is that one discussion we need to have here right now, or
well, actually, we amended it down to 215.
in the previous budget, but now this is the 22-23
this is-
budget?
This is
Are we
coming
gonna-
out of the work sessions, but it did include that 16,000 carry forward that we may not need.
So do we need to have it in there, or do we just put it in there later if we need it?
We'll put it in there later if we need it. My
So it should be the
suggestion-
215 here
Yeah,
also.
what I'm suggesting is we take each of these, because they have to be voted on separately.
They do have to be voted
They
on?
have to be voted on separately, because you need a roll call vote on each budget, spending money in each category, for each entity. And when we get to, Osceola Water, we can amend it 215.8.
Alright, so
So,
I
beginning.
can make the motion, but can we do it individually? Can we roll call each one or individually, or do we?
In the past precedent is that we have motion and support for each budget,
Okay,
and,
so I can just start with moving for General Township.
you could move for General Township
I'll
at
second.
288.4, we have a motion and support.
Ms. Gardner.
Nope, any further discussion on the motion, hearing none, Ms. Swool? Well, you got ahead of me here, so
Let's
I'm
go.
trying to catch you up.
There we go, thank you.
Let's do it correctly. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the General Township operating budget for the coming fiscal year? Hearing none, Ms. Swool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Ware.
Yes.
Mr. Hopewell.
Yes.
Yes.
The next is Osceola Township Water,
All motion.
to amend the figure. Ms.
I'll
Swool?
second.
Yes.
To have a motion from Ms. Swool, supported by Mr. Jenke, to amend the figure to 215,800, and then approve that figure, is that correct?
Correct.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call please, Ms. Swool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Ware.
Yes.
Mr. Hopewell.
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have Tamarack City Water at 122,660. Ms. Gardner moves, is there support to accept the budget for next year? Mr. Wareham, a motion and support to approve the Tamarack City Water budget for the coming fiscal year. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Swool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Ware.
Yes.
Mr. Hopewell.
Yes. Mason wastewater, we have an initial budget based on figures from this year for the coming year,
Based on UP engineers.
based on UP
Yeah.
engineering input to this point. The budget will change, we all know that, but we need to approve the template to move forward. Do I have a motion to approve Mason wastewater budget?
Move.
Mr. Jenke,
I'll
support. Ms. Gardner, so we have a motion and support for Mason wastewater for the coming fiscal year. It's 16,200. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Swool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Ware.
Yes.
Mr. Hopewell.
Yes.
Yes.
We're now up to road funds. In the old road fund, we have $6,950. Do I have a motion to approve that as the budgeted amount?
You were
for-
talking about this, is that the number you we're still thinking? Is that fine for the budget?
That's
Fine for the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We have a motion to approve that. Mr. Jenke, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Wareham. We have a motion and support to approve the old road fund budget at $6,950, $6,950. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Wool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Waring. Mr. Hopper.
Yes.
Yes.
Road fund district, 3 mills, $64,060.
29,660.
29,660, we did not, this is the amended figure, 29,660, the millage remains the same.
Correct.
Thank you very much for the correction. District 1, 3 mills, we're approving 29,660 for a budget figure. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Mr. Wolf, is there support? Mr. Jenke? Further discussion on the motion to approve District 1 at 3 mills road fund at $29,660.
So our 3 mil road fund that we don't have to worry about, this number is still good this year, we don't have to worry about losing that yet, right? Even though we're
No.
talking about putting it on the ballot later.
Correct.
Yes. That will be a
That's
top.
good for this year still.
It's good for this year, it will be a topic
Oh.
of discussion at the April meeting as to which
Yeah. Which
election
election?
we will target.
Okay.
So
It
renewal,
is on, I will collect it this winter. That'll be
Okay.
the last time.
Okay.
very important point, thank you. Any further discussion relative to the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Wool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yep.
Mr. Waring. Yep. Mr. Hopper.
Yes.
Yes.
District 2, 3 mills, amended figure is
62,075.
$62,075. Do I have a motion to approve the
I'll make a
District 2?
motion.
Ms. Gardner moves approval of the $62,075 figure road fund. Is there support?
I'll support.
Ms. Wool supports Ms. Gardner's motion. Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Roll call, Ms. Wool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Waring. Mr. Hopper.
Yes.
Yes.
Last item under road fund, District 4 road fund, 3 mills. The amended figure is, again, Ms. Gardner?
33,040. 33040.
Do I have a motion to approve the District 4 mills at 3 mills, road fund at $33,040?
I'll motion.
Ms. Wool, is there support?
I'll support.
Ms. Gardner, we have a motion and support to approve District 4's road fund, 3 mills, the total amount of $33,040. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Wool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Waring.
Yes.
Mr. Hopper.
Yes. We've concluded the road funds. Fire departments. And there's some input here relative to the fire departments.
I move that we maintain the TC fire department millage of 5.28 and approve the budget of 52,252.
A motion from Mr. Jenke to retain the mills at 5.258 mills for Tamarack City.
5.28 mils.
5.28, what did I say?
I don't know, you had three numbers
No,
after.
I'm sorry, 5.28 mils. For Precinct 1 fire, that's Tamarack City, in the amount of 52,252 for the budget. I have a motion, is there support?
I'll support.
Support from Ms. Wool. Is there discussion on the motion?
Question.
Yes, sir.
These ones
Please
we got
proceed.
last night where we have the Tamarack City and Dollar Bay budgets, does
Mhm.
this mean nothing?
Yeah, that is slightly different. The
Yeah.
figure that you have before you, thank you very much for the question, is the amount submitted by the Tamarack City Fire Department.
This says
52,252.
This says 52,897.
Yes, it does, but there's a letter that came in from the fire department that 52,252.
Okay, and then Dollar Bay's is different also.
Yeah, those are no, they're all, they're updated, those are garbage.
That was my,
So I,
Yes.
good thing I didn't
They're
go to my
all-
truck to get my stuff. Alright,
They're all.
alright.
Good discussion on the motion. Any additional discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Wool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yep.
Mr. Waring.
yes,
Mr. Hopper.
Yes.
Yes.
Next item under fire departments is Dollar Bay Fire Department. Mills are 2.2 mills.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2.2 mils and the budget of 58,140.
We have a motion for the mills and the budget. Is there support?
Support.
Mr. Jenke. With the motion and support for Dollar Bay Fire at 3.2 mils in the amount of 58,140. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Wool?
Ms. Gardner.
Yes.
Mr. Jenke.
Yes.
Mr. Waring.
yes.
Mr. Hopper.
Yes.
Yes.
Finally, under fire, Calumet Precinct, 1.4 mils in the amount of $10,120. Do I have a motion for the millage and the amount?
Moved.
Mr.
Millage and
Wareham,
amount.
I'm sorry?
Millage and amount.
Millage and amount from Mr. Wareham, is there support? Ms. Gardner supports. We have a motion and support for precinct 4 fire in the amount of 1.4 mils, $10,120 budget. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, excuse me, once again, Ms. Hool.
Ms.
Yes.
Gardner. Just lost me. Just were so. Mr.
Told you,
J.G.
I was right once earlier in
Aaron?
the day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Ware. Mr. Nicola.
Yes.
Yes.
Forgive me,
You kinda stunned me.
This has been a long week.
It has.
And I thought
And
I
it's
was
only
expediting
Tuesday.
things and caught myself. At least I caught myself. I guess that's my second time being right. We have concluded our work relative to the budgets. We now have the assessor's contract
Yes.
for consideration.
What is it, what is the length of this? Is it,
3 years.
okay, it's the 3 years again?
It's a 3-year agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So
with a-
she's willing to, instead of having an escalating rate, she's willing to agree to a stipulated rate for the entire
Mm-hmm.
period.
An increase of each month for the entire period.
Is there an increase somewhere?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from what we're paying her right now to what this would start, I think.
Oh, yeah, but
was
it's not gonna
75
increase
bucks.
after that.
Yeah.
She's willing to go for 3 years, just like
Flat
this.
$75 more.
Each year, or just in the first year?
That's
No,
what I'm,
all-
that's what I'm,
all 3
that's what I'm
years, she
seeing
would
here.
get the same rate.
That's why I'm asking.
Versus she
Make sure
used to
it's
have a
okay.
graduated rate every year, but this
Right.
time she's,
So what
Saying
is
she'll
the
take the-
difference?
I
Guess
think
I
it was
didn't have time to
75
look,
bucks.
sorry. So, it is 75, but she
$75
wants it on top of her highest rate?
On top of the 1875, which is her current rate,
right,
and she's going 1950
mm-hmm.
3 years.
for 3 years. I mean, that's, I mean,
I think that's a great deal.
I mean, the question that obviously is out there, and I pose this to Mark because I feel like Mark is the, this is in his scope of work as the supervisor, is like his opinion on how well our current assessor is doing, I guess, in his eyes. You know, are we, is there another choice even really? I don't know if there is, but, should we be looking, or is this something that I mean, this is a 3-year deal. If we're not happy now, you know, it's gonna be a long 3 years. So, I just put it out there now. So, you deal with it the most, you're at those border review meetings, you know, I mean, I guess I can listen in to, our other officers do deal some with her, but maybe not as much. What's the thoughts here? Like a little open discussion before we go any further with this contract.
Well, my relationship with her has been, I believe, a successful one. There is some inconsistency with her schedule sometimes. Weather is a
Agreed.
variable, particularly in the wintertime. It has come into play a couple of times that she simply cannot get here. The Board of Review, I would say, seems quite satisfied with the work that she does. She moves very quickly at times, but I don't think unprofessionally. She'll contact me when there are issues that need to be addressed, and I will do likewise with questions. She will provide me with updated information. I do know that we have issues around finding assessors. There are expectations, I believe, at the state level, in conversations primarily with Kristen, with Tracy, about township, and I think everyone's aware of the fact that townships are stretched when it comes to finding assessors, and that this arrangement has worked for us, though it is not the one that is ideal from the perspective of the state, if I may phrase it that way. It is one that has succeeded for us.
Why would you say it's not ideal?
Well, the state has expectations, I believe, and I'm kind of out of my league here, but it's my understanding that they expect units of government to have an individual assessor on staff. Is that the appropriate way
They
to
expect
say
them to be a part of our payroll.
Yes.
That's what's supposed to be. She is obviously not doing that, but, I don't know, have we been called to the carpet for that yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I mean, we're gonna
And the last,
roll a dice and say 3 more years is the way we're gonna go,
and
so.
the last time we approached her about it, she said she wouldn't
She
do
wouldn't
it
do it that way.
as an employee, and, you know, we're kind of in a conundrum because we, by law, have to have an assessor, and yet there are not a ton of assessors out there,
Not
and
very many
this
at all, as far as I know.
schooling is very
And
expensive.
the ones that are
if
out
we
there
were
are
to-
usually have a pretty full plate.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the problem too,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, like Calumet Township has one, but they don't share. Hope City has one, they don't share, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, some of these entities have their own and that's all they do.
Some of us smaller local units of government are not blessed with the budgets that those
Mm-mm.
entities have.
No, and that's why, like, you know, whether we were to like ask Mark to do it or even get somebody on our own, I don't even think we could afford the school. I mean, it's
No, I mean,
really
the
expensive.
certification, is tough.
Mm.
There's,
Well, that too.
there's a reason why there isn't any, they're not available. Okay, well, I mean, I just wanted to get, you know, I mean, if we're not happy, what are our options? I don't know if I'm not saying we're not happy. I guess my next question would be, are we getting a lot of complaints at the board of review or are you receiving a lot of complaints from the general constituency here?
Looking at this past month, or this present month's past board of review activities, though she was not present for all meetings, we dealt with 16 petitions and some inquiries made by citizens during the board of review, and I thought every one of them were handled very well by both the board and by the assessor. And I don't recall anybody offering up even constructive criticism post-decision in the process. There was, I think, just one denial, if I recall correctly, and the rationale made perfect sense to the board of review, and they denied it. There was extra effort on behalf of the board of review and an extension on behalf of the assessor, even though she was not present all the time. She addressed the issues before the board of review concluded its meeting. The minutes, I think, are reflective of a system that, at least in this instance, this March, moved rather expeditiously and successfully through the process. I don't think that the assessed values have been challenged that much. I mean, the questions were raised, but there were people that came in with very specific questions that left from a minimum with their questions answered satisfactorily. They may not have always appreciated the answer, but I think they got an answer that was clear and understandable, and the rationale was supported by the evidence. I'll give you one quick example. A gentleman came in, he had some questions about property and structures on his property, and though the assessor had a commitment that took her out a little bit before he was able to get back, she took pictures, she provided information to the board of review of property, et cetera, so they had information. And when the gentleman came back, there was a lengthy discussion with the board, and they satisfactorily resolved it. He withdrew his position, and everybody seemed satisfied. And I went, whoa, that's rather interesting. Not being technologically capable, as most everyone knows, I was quite impressed by the way the thing proceeded. All the information was presented, and we had hoped for some relief, but realized that the property had probably been appraised, appropriately and fairly, and withdrew his petition for consideration. I took that as, well, that's rather interesting. Usually people come in and have a very serious issue from their perspective, but the evidence persuaded him to the contrary, and he accepted that. And I was impressed by both his response and by the way the board handled it. They handled it with information that our assessor had provided prior to departing to assist in the process, so. that left me with a favorable impression on top of it, even though she wasn't there to answer directly. She provided what we needed, more appropriately, the board needed, to go through it successfully, address the issue with the resident walked out satisfied with the answer. So,
Do you, maybe she can't do this, but I know we've always talked about getting a report from her monthly, and it seems like we never do.
No.
You've had to cover for her a lot on that
There
particular
is,
item.
there is at times, a lack of formal reporting, and we can be a bit more insistent on that going forward.
Maybe she has nothing to report, I don't know, but, and say we have nothing to report.
I mean, if we're paying
I mean,
her
it's-
money every month, she should have something.
We're paying her a good chunk of our budget, you know,
And that's the only thing, I know, that, it seems like every month we talk to her, there's nobody says it.
Mark has to cover a lot for her, for what's going on, so.
We can
But that's,
stress that point with her, that a monthly report is really essential for us at the board level, even if you don't have much to report. Take a moment, send us an email.
I know it's a pain, in the butt, but it is, but.
Because it might be, can pay pretty good money to do it. right?
So,
From a work standpoint, I would say she's excellent. I mean, we passed our EMR with flying colors last
I
time.
forgot that.
she did dig us out of some holes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and, you know, as far as like her knowledge of the job and everything, it's really, she's second to none. I mean, she knows what she's talking about. In my experience, we've had problems with her, and residents. I've gotten, you know, many complaints, although I will say, this past tax year, starting with the winter tax year, part of the year, I haven't gotten any complaints about her recently, so, it seems that she's returning, you know, calls to people, or else they're just not bothering to tell me anything. There is definitely people who would rather talk to me than her, but I think that's just a personality thing, she's kind of abrasive,
She
so
can be,
she's, you know, it's hard to,
it might come with that job though,
could be, it very well
after
could be.
years and years of that, it might be a part of that.
So I mean, overall, you know, is the people in the township, I don't have a great answer for that. But as far as the job is concerned, I think she does a great job.
Okay. The only reason I ask these questions is because we got burned so badly
I know.
in the past, and I just wanna make sure that if we're gonna sign another contract, we're not doing what we did before.
Right.
So,
Well, this would be our third contract with her, with them. You know, and like you said, I mean, they dug us out of a previous
they did,
hole.
she
and
dug us
did
out of a
really
hole,
good
and as
job.
long as we're, I mean, I'm not saying I like the tax rate I see on my thing that I keep getting, but I'm not sure there's anything that, you know, like you said, a lot of people go and then they realize that maybe it is fair based on the way that she has to do it, you know, so.
Mhm.
That was, I think that's a reasonable conclusion based on the past year, the events that have taken place. I mean, there was, for example, you'll indulge me for another minute or two.
I will, I appreciate you guys'
Relative to the
input.
Lutheran church that was sold and is now occupied by a nonprofit, and the Board of Review received information initially on the 14th, if I recall correctly, and then asked the petitioners to come back when the assessor would be there, and went through the process, and came back, and I was pleased with the affirming nature of the discussion, and the recommendation that came forth was to approve the nonprofit exemption, and the assessor played a role in coming to that determination by pointing things out, agreeing that now all the paperwork was in, and she had brought a document that the board first looked at and wasn't sure that it was sufficient relative to an occupant of the building, another nonprofit. And if I recall correctly, now this is going from memory, the assessor said, no, that's sufficient, that more than satisfies the need here. And I thought that was an affirming and proactive response to the petitioner, who had come back for the second time in a week to address the issue, but ultimately got it addressed successfully with input from the assessor. Now, I also agree with Krista, she has a very interesting personality, she can be quite firm at times, but as I think we speculated, that comes with, here, I'm being obviously somewhat careful with my language. But my conversations with her and expectations with her, with the exception of her reports, we've talked about that internally a couple of times, and I have pointed that out on at least one or perhaps two occasions, I frankly haven't followed up in recent times because of board review and stuff like that, and her presence has been. It is at times a little relative to her arrival time, but when she's here, she puts in, hour and a half to 2 hours, she's available, people know that she's supposed to be here. We could do a little bit more perhaps with a sign up, reminding the residents that the assessor is.
So we need a neon sign that flashes on
When
when she's
she
here.
shows up.
How tall does that have to be?
Kind of like Luxor in Vegas, you know, something
Yeah,
that
like,
shoots up
boom,
into
the
the
light-
sky,
yeah,
hey, the
they-
light's on, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Anyway, I digress, but,
I appreciate your input, I just wanted to, you guys deal with it on a daily basis, and me and Don do not, so I just wanna make sure that if I'm voting for this, that you guys are okay with this, so.
And I mean, this doesn't really have to do with her, but if there is, an issue, that you have, and you've taken it to a board of review and they say that it can't change, you still do have the option to go to tax tribunal.
Right.
And they have different rules, they don't operate under the same rules that the board of reviews have to operate on, so it still could change.
Okay.
one footnote, she stays on top of things, she went through the trainings, again,
Mhm.
this year, and in the order review manual are all the certifications, and hers is right on top, so
Yeah.
she stays on top of things.
Yeah.
To maintain her status.
Yeah. That's what I mean, job wise, she's excellent, I mean, I can't complain, I mean, she knows her stuff and she's good, it's just the other stuff that.
We'll emphasize the reporting too, should the board go forward with this, that we'll have expectations that if you don't have anything, at least alert us to the fact that you don't have anything.
Was there anything other from the old into the new that got
I
stuck
did
in
not
there that
have
we
time
didn't
to
see?
I
compare.
kinda walked line for line.
Other
I
than the
didn't see
dates,
too much
Okay.
difference.
other than the dates that I saw, everything, and the salary arrangement and the dates right here, everything else looked the same. My only other question is why do we not have, we have a supervisor at OsceolaTownship.org, we have a secretary at OsceolaTownship.org, why can we not have an assessor at OsceolaTownship.org?
I don't know if I would be able to set it up, cause it's through charter. I don't know, I would have to see if I could set her up that way.
That's just my,
Yeah,
why does she have a separate one that?
she just did that herself for
I
all
get
of
it.
her entities,
Yeah,
just to
okay.
keep it separate, but.
If I may, should the board take action on it, I will still bring the agreement down for review on Friday by our attorney.
So do we need the motion to approve this now?
We can,
Ba-
if that's the
ba-
board's pleasure.
Okay, or do you want to say something?
I was gonna
Pending,
suggest that maybe we table it to the April meeting, because Mark is going to see the lawyer just for him to
Okay.
review it quickly, and then ask her, because she did this last time, I don't know, but ask her if it's okay to extend her contract by 1 month at her current rate, and then, approve it starting in May.
That's a good, I'd rather have the lawyer look at it. I don't see anything big,
No.
Right,
safety first.
I'm fine with it for the most part.
yeah.
What is the board's pleasure, then, to act on it, or is there a motion to table till
I'd like
April
to,
13th?
I'd like to make a motion to table it to the April board meeting,
Pending review.
correct.
We have a motion on the floor to table action on the assessor's proposed contract pending review by the township attorney. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Support from Mr. Wimmer. Motion and support to table. Further discussion is necessary. All in favor of the motion to table, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. We will table it till our April 13th meeting. This time we hope to have feedback from our attorney relative to the document. And we will notify our assessor tomorrow that we are requesting a 30-day extension pending review and approval. Anything else on this, Tom? Is there any other business before we call for public comment one more time? Anything that the board feels we need to discuss about budgets prior to winding up tonight's meeting? I believe we've covered everything on our agenda, but the final opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody present that would like to offer comment for the board's consideration at this time? Before a motion to adjourn, you will have up to 3 minutes. Would ask you to identify yourself and then you may begin speaking. Mr. Matt Folk.
This is just FYI, okay? I just wanted to talk about that repair that was done on the highway. There was called a shear. Cast iron does that when it breaks, it looks like you cut it off with a saw. I mean, we could have been real cheap and just put a Band-Aid on there, $200 Band-Aid, but I don't do that. And because there is such a length between first and third, I put a valve in there because it's such a long distance. And just the materials came to like about $1,700, and that's not counting what the contractor did. You know, I mean, his time, plus in the spring after the snow melts, it'll have to be remediated. You know, so there's some work left to do there. We did shut off 5 services were shut off during that time. And we had to do a boil water advisory for those people. And I ran samples down to Berga 2 days in a row. The second day I went to get a sample at Martin Custom and Collision, and I did a real digger. And it hurt.
I seen you stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, and you looked like you were leaning over there. So I don't know what you did there, but yeah.
Oh, I did a dandy. Well, anyway, I mean, this is just to give you people an idea what it's costing to do this stuff. Plus, I mean, I think I turned that slip into you 3 different times of the things that have to be done, you know, within the next couple of years or so. And valves, hydrants, submersible pumps, handhelds, you know, I can't remember what the estimate was, but just to give you an idea what it's gonna
I mean,
cost.
this is obviously above and beyond the goosenecks too.
Yeah.
Just to keep the system operating in general, this is a list, and then there's
Right.
the darn lead and copper.
Yeah, I talked to
Thing
Flamingo about that, and he was surprised that we already did. I told him we did 9 on Elm Avenue already, so.
Have you heard anything in terms of money still possibly be coming for that stuff, separate money, or nothing, eh?
Oh, well,
I know there was some talk.
Whitmore supposedly, he's got in the budget, roads and water was one of them. I have no idea what she's talking about water, what she plans on doing.
I'm hearing the state has surplus. I mean, is that a place that they're gonna put it, or, you know, I don't know.
But the
I've
thing
seen
that bites-
mandated something, you know.
You know, the thing that bites me is what it's gonna cost us. Okay, the state already paid for Flint, and they paid for Port Huron.
Right.
I mean, those are 2 big systems, and we can't get crap here. You know, that's what bites me. You know. So that was just FYI, okay?
Yep.
You may have to put that 16 in the water just to cover some of that stuff.
Questions of Bob? Bob's comments? We need to keep this in mind going forward. You have his list, I believe, in the folder in my office.
Well, I mean, there's that whole rate discussion for the water department, it still has to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we're approving budgets, that rate discussion still has to happen.
Cause that's stuff like those requests from Steve that have to be, those would be next up to that.
Thank you for bringing that up during public comment. Anyone else like to address the board prior to closing the public hearing that we recessed and then brought into this meeting? So please note in the record that the public hearing relative to the budgets that ran through this meeting has now been closed. I think we need a formal motion on that. I can do that just by declaring it closed. Just a reminder to the board, we will begin in earnest the detailed work that we began during our work sessions to examine across the financial spectrum for the township, everything from costs in the water system, road system, salaries, rates, etc. That will begin in earnest or continue more appropriately with items probably being presented as early as the April 13th meeting in some categories. So anticipate that over the next several months of meetings, that there will be financial issues and plans for the board's consideration. Anything else that the board needs to discuss in the special meeting relative to finances and budget before a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn from Mr. Jenke, is there support?
Yeah,
Mr. Wareham
No,
supports reluctantly, may the record
You
show,
should stay.
the motion to adjourn. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries, we stand adjourned.